On October 11th, 1969, in a quiet neighborhood in San Francisco, a taxi driver pulls over at the curb. The passenger leans forward. One movement, controlled, a 9mm pistol fired at close range. Paul Stine dies instantly. The passenger does not run. He takes his time, reaches into the front seat, and cuts away a piece of the driver's shirt. Then he walks away. 3 police officers see him. They let him pass because the description they received was wrong. In the weeks that follow, letters arrive. Envelopes, stamped, mailed, inside, pieces of that same shirt. Proof, not just of the murder, but of something else. Control. This wasn't just a killer, this was a system interacting with another system. Law enforcement, media, human perception. And something inside that system had already failed. This is not the story of a man who got away. This is the story of how multiple systems, investigative, forensic, psychological, aligned in a way that allowed him to, and why, more than 50 years later, they still haven't recovered. The late 1960s, Northern California, a region defined by rapid growth, cultural transformation, and institutional optimism. Law enforcement agencies were structured for a different kind of threat: localized crime, predictable patterns, known offenders. The system worked because the assumptions held. Then, in December 1968, those assumptions were tested. Lake Herman Road, a remote stretch of asphalt near Benicia. 2 teenagers, parked in a car. David Faraday, 17. Betty Lou Jensen, 16. A vehicle approaches, stops behind them. Moments later, gunfire. Both victims are dead at the scene. No witnesses and no clear motive, no suspect. At the time, it looked like an isolated incident, and the system processed it that way. 7 months later, July 4th, 1969, Blue Rock Springs Park. Another couple, another parked car. This time, the attacker uses a flashlight. He shines it directly into the vehicle, blinds them, then fires multiple rounds through the window. Darlene Ferrin dies. Michael Mageau survives, barely. Mageau gives a description: white male, heavyset, calm. But something else stands out. The attacker leaves, then comes back, walks up again, fires more shots, not to ensure death, but to complete something, a pattern. Days later, the letters begin. 3 newspapers, 3 nearly identical envelopes inside. A cipher, 408 characters, and a demand: print this, or I will kill again. This is the moment the system changes, because now, the killer is no longer just committing crimes. He is interacting with infrastructure. Media becomes a transmission layer. Fear becomes a distribution mechanism. And law enforcement is forced into a reactive posture. The cipher is solved, and not by professionals, by a school teacher and his wife. Inside the message, a statement. Killing gives him purpose. He believes the victims become something else after death. The system now has a profile: male, organized, seeks recognition. But that profile introduces a new variable: expectation. And expectation can distort perception. In Vallejo, a man named Arthur Leigh Allen is living a relatively ordinary life. Former Navy, worked as a teacher, mechanically inclined. Known to acquaintances as intelligent, but unpredictable. At some point, he receives a wristwatch, brand name Zodiac, on its face, a crosshair symbol, the same symbol that begins appearing on the killer's letters. To investigators, this is not proof, but it is alignment, and alignment is where systems begin to bias. Allen tells people things, hypotheticals, ideas about killing couples, using a flashlight, using a gun. He mentions the name Zodiac. At the time, these are just statements. After the letters, they become data points. The system begins to converge not on certainty, but on probability. Then, September 27th, 1969, Lake Berryessa, daylight. A couple is lying on a blanket near the water. A man approaches, wearing a black hood on the chest, the crosshair symbol. He speaks calmly, gives instructions, ties them up using pre-cut lengths of line. Then, he switches weapons from distance to proximity. A knife, multiple stab wounds, deliberate, controlled. Before leaving, he writes on the victim's car door dates, locations, a tally. This is not escalation by accident. This is escalation by design. The system is evolving. At this point, law enforcement has multiple jurisdictions involved. Vallejo, Napa, San Francisco, each with its own processes, its own communication protocols, and no centralized real-time coordination. Think of it like a distributed network without synchronization. Each node processes information locally, but the system as a whole lags behind reality. Then comes October 11th, Paul Stein, San Francisco, urban environment, high visibility, maximum risk. The killer commits the crime and remains in the system long enough to be seen. Officers respond quickly, too quickly, for the system to correct itself. Dispatch sends out a description, black male. The suspect is white. 3 officers encounter him. He is walking calmly, no urgency, no visible panic. He matches behavior, but not description, so the system filters him out. This is the fault line, not the wrong description, but the assumption that the description is correct. Because once that assumption is accepted, every subsequent observation is constrained by it. The officers are not looking for behavior. They are looking for a match, and he doesn't match. He leaves the area on foot, unchallenged. This is the moment the outcome becomes inevitable. At 9:58 p.m., the last opportunity for immediate capture passes without recognition. After this, the system is in recovery mode, but it is already too late. The letters continue, more ciphers, more threats. At one point, he claims he will destroy a school bus, describes a bomb, gives partial instructions. Law enforcement must now allocate resources, not just to investigation, but to prevention, and prevention, based on uncertain data, is inefficient. Meanwhile, the suspect pool grows, hundreds, then thousands of names. By some estimates, over 2,500 individuals are considered. Each one requires time, verification, elimination. Arthur Leigh Allen remains near the center. Search warrants are executed. Weapons are found, explosive materials, documents, but nothing that directly links him to the crimes. Fingerprints from the taxi, no match. Handwriting comparisons, no match. DNA, extracted decades later from a stamp, No match. The system has a narrative, but it does not have evidence. And without evidence, the system cannot act. Years pass. The letters stop. The case cools. Then it transitions from active investigation to historical problem. In 1974, Allen is arrested. Unrelated charges. He is incarcerated. During this period, no confirmed Zodiac letters are received. When he is released, communication briefly resumes, then stops permanently. This creates a pattern, but again, pattern is not proof. Decades later, new systems are introduced. DNA analysis, computational cryptography, machine learning. Each one offers potential, but also introduces new failure modes. DNA from old evidence is degraded, contaminated, handled by multiple people before modern protocols existed. Attempts are made to extract usable genetic material from stamps, from envelopes, from objects. But the signal is weak, the noise overwhelming. At the same time, independent researchers apply algorithms to the remaining ciphers. Short strings, 13 characters, 32 characters. From a mathematical perspective, these are underdetermined systems. Too many possible solutions, not enough constraints. The result is something known as overfitting. The system produces answers, but those answers reflect the input bias, not objective truth. Names appear. Connections are suggested, but none can be verified. The investigation reaches a new equilibrium: high information, low certainty. Meanwhile, the cultural system takes over. Books, films, documentaries. Each one reinforces certain narratives, certain suspects, certain interpretations. Over time, the story becomes self-reinforcing. The myth stabilizes, even as the evidence remains incomplete. And that may be the most important failure. Not a single decision, not a single error, but the interaction between systems. Law enforcement, operating on incomplete data, media, amplifying specific signals, human cognition, seeking patterns. Together, they create a feedback loop where some possibilities are explored deeply and others are never fully examined. The Zodiac Killer is still unidentified, officially. No arrest, no conviction, no confirmed identity. But the system that failed to stop him is no longer the same system. It has evolved. More centralized coordination, better forensic protocols, improved data sharing. And yet, there is a concept in engineering called signal versus noise. When the noise becomes too strong, the signal disappears. Not because it isn't there, but because it can no longer be distinguished. In this case, the signal existed. Fingerprints, DNA, eyewitness accounts. But each one was incomplete, fragmented, context-dependent. And over time, the noise accumulated: media narratives, conflicting testimonies, false leads, until the system reached a point where separating the two became nearly impossible. The Zodiac didn't just evade capture, he operated in a space where multiple systems intersected. And in that intersection, ambiguity thrived. Some systems fail suddenly. A bridge collapses, a server crashes, a valve breaks. Others fail slowly, quietly, one assumption at a time, until the outcome is no longer preventable. This was the second kind, because the most dangerous failure is not when a system breaks, it's when it continues to function while producing the wrong result. And no one realizes until it's too late. Some things are documented, some things document themselves.